I'd like to start with Mr. Arvind to talk about the India stream of the International Space Investment Initiative, which is an Australian government program that aims to support collaborations. Arvind, could you talk us through the proposed objectives and outcomes of ISI India and the mutual priority areas that you'll be focusing on? Do you want to do it? Up to you. You can do it from there or come to there.
Thank you, Sarah. Firstly, thank you all for the opportunity. It's a privilege to represent my home country in my mother country, and it's an honor to be among such esteemed panelists and esteemed audience. So, ISI India program was announced in March 2022 by the Commonwealth Government. So this program targets to catalyze the industry collaboration between Australia and India in space projects and space missions. We intend to support joint missions and technology demonstrations that are collaboratively developed by the Australian and Indian industry players within our space sector. So we are talking about missions that go into space, we're talking about technology demonstrations as payloads, we're talking about systems that can be collaboratively developed between the two countries. And we are intending to support impactful projects that will strengthen bilateral relationships between the industry level in Australia and India. So since the program was announced, we have been undertaking several rounds of consultations in the last 4 months. We interacted with a number of stakeholders, government agencies from both countries, industry, VCs, academia, research institutions, and several stakeholders who will be a part of this program and a part of this process. And we targeted and identified a few priority areas on which this program will concentrate on. And they are aligned to the Australian civil space priority areas and India's interests as well. And they are as follows: Earth observation, position navigation and timing, access to space, applied space medicine and life sciences, with strong links to India's ambitious Gaganyaan program, which we are proud of as part of partners, and accompanying technology areas such as advanced manufacturing, cybersecurity, artificial intelligence, that support space missions. And based on our consultations with Indian stakeholders, ISRO and InSpace and NSIL yesterday, we have added in space situational awareness into the list as well. So space situational awareness and sustainability will be a strong focus. So once this program becomes public and we announce that the guidelines are open for applications, we will invite Australian and Indian industry players in matchmaking sessions that will be facilitated jointly. And this will be the start of further rounds of engagement that the agency would proudly like to be a part of. So India's heritage in space inspires all of us. And we are here to learn, contribute, and strengthen our bilateral relationships, not just at government to government level, but at industry to industry level, which will be a key for the success of the industry in the future. I'm sure a lot of interactions have happened already in the last 3 days, and the ISI India program will be the start of an epic journey that will be challenging, but satisfying and rewarding to both our nations. Thank you.
Thank you, Arvind. And from that list of priority areas you gave us, it's clear the overlap already with the subject matter of some of the MOUs that have been signed between Australian and Indian firms here. And I'm sure there'll be a lot of enthusiasm when the grant rounds are open. So everyone, please keep an eye, even on social media, we'll make sure we publicize when that happens. I'd now like to move to Jasmine, who's running one of Australia's leading incubators, the Innovation and Collaboration Centre at the University of South Australia. In particular, she also runs the Venture Capitalist Space Program, which has had a number of Indian firms participate. And I actually had the pleasure of visiting the centre when I was last in Australia, and I was very impressed. I've seen a lot of incubators. They all have slightly different models, but I really think that the work that Jasmine and her team do is quite innovative and quite groundbreaking. And for those who apply and are accepted to her program, it's really a wonderful opportunity. But Jasmine, would you tell us a little bit more about how it works?
Sure. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, so the Innovation and Collaboration Centre is based at the University of South Australia. It was set up in 2015 as a strategic partnership between the government and the university. And the goal is to really support early stage, high growth potential deep tech startups. We had a flagship program called Venture Catalyst, and in 2018, following the announcement of the Australian Space Agency headquarters in Adelaide, the South Australian Government also provided us with some funding to run a space-specific startup program. So that's Venture Catalyst Space. It's a 6-month accelerator program. It provides structured support over the 6 months, and we take up to 10 companies per annum. The incubator is the ICC, and companies can stay in the incubator for 12 months for free or up to 2 years, depending on how long it takes for them to start. And we know that space is a very hard industry to break through, so we often support companies for more than 12 months. So as I said, the program runs annually. Sorry about this, I have a cough. We support the companies with 10,000 Australian dollars, and that money is provided to the companies to spend on whatever they like. We're trying to remove the barriers for entry. Thank you, Sarah. The companies also get 6 months of workshops as part of the accelerator program. They get a dedicated business mentor, and they get access to the space sector in terms of industry experts. So a range of different people from all different parts of the Australian space sector, but also international. We also connect them with our research organisations in Australia, and not just the University of South Australia. We extend that out to different research organisations depending on where that company needs support. And we also provide the companies with access to students. So trying to remove all those barriers of labour, trying to help them, support them with marketing or any other things that they need at that time. So far we've supported 30 space startups, and they've all gone on to raise collectively $12 million in additional funding. 90% of those companies are still operating, and 70% have generated revenue or are running on program and grants. So it's a really high percentage for early stage startups. So why are we different? We don't take equity. We are running an accelerator program within an incubator, so we're providing all the suite of services. And as I said, trying to remove those boundaries to entry. What's unique about the program now is what I noticed last year is out of the 30 companies, 9 of those have actually been from India or led by Indian nationals that have been either based in Australia or based in Europe. So that's more than 25%, close to 30% of the companies. So these companies are, you may know of some of them, so ResearchSat is a space medicine company, Astrogate Labs, you've seen it here at the exhibition, Hex20, who signed an MOU at the start of the program, SatSearch, who was up on stage before, 114AI, who are based in New Delhi, Digantra, to my left, Perspective, who are based in Berlin, Graha Space, who are exhibiting today at the Expo, and QL Space, who also signed MOUs on Monday. So quite great companies, and due to this natural alignment between the Indian and Australian space startups, we've just been provided with some additional funding from the Australian government to facilitate some further collaboration and partnerships between all Australian startups in space and Indian space startups. So we're opening that program next month. One more key thing is we're opening our new Venture Catalyst Space program on the 5th of October. So if anyone's interested in applying, we have a website, you can go to that, and please feel free to pass that on.
I think that's a pretty impressive record, 30% of the companies that have been through Jasmine's excellent program having been Indian or Indian origin. So wonderful the Australian government's been able to step in with a little bit more funding to keep that program into a different area as well. So surprise, surprise, we have one of those startups here on the stage with us. Anirudh from Digentara is here to talk to us about his experience in Australia. And Anirudh, I'd be really interested to know why you sought incubation in Australia of all the global options.
First of all, I would like to give a brief introduction about Digantara. We are a company working towards building a space situational awareness platform for global space economy. We are building an infrastructure layer like Google Maps, but for space. So one of the aim that we had when we started our company was to take our company global, which is why we wanted to explore several other ecosystems where the main focus has been towards space situational awareness. That's when we noticed that the Australian space policy and the strategy was very keen towards building indigenous space situational awareness capabilities. That's when we felt that we should explore this ecosystem. So we applied for venture capitalist space. We participated in the program for 6 months. We were able to work with the Australian space ecosystem, many companies at this point in time, which are working towards building indigenous capabilities there, like Silentium Defense, Sabre Astronautics. Most of them are our partners. We are very keen towards building our capability in a global way to support global space operations. This was one of the major reasons why we wanted to explore the Australian space ecosystem. And when it comes to the experience, we've been very fortunate enough to work with the defense there and also the space agency to understand what are their priority areas in space situational awareness and understand how we can support that initiative, which is why we wanted to understand the customer requirements first, be it on the defense side or the commercial side, and then build a technology stack over that.
Thanks very much. I'd now like to turn to Mr. Abhilash Chandra, the founder of the Sabrin Group, a green tech company working at the intersection of health, the circular economy, and space. And Abe, one of the things that you've done is put together a consortium. You had a multi-party MOU signed earlier this week. Could you perhaps outline for us why you went for that consortia approach to space collaboration?
Sure, thank you, Sarah. Namaste, everybody. My name is Abhilash Chandra. I'm here representing the Sabrin Group of companies, which is a South Australian-based entity. Before I start, I just wanted to thank CII, ISRO, InSpace, NSIL, and obviously the Australian Space Agency for allowing me to be part of this amazing forum. Now, the Sabrin Group are doing a number of things. The essence behind it is doing the best thing for people and planet. And one of the things is about adequate healthcare delivery to the population, whether it be civilian, whether it be defense, and whether it be space. One of the things that the MOU and the consortium that brings with it is some of the amazing intellectual capabilities that India has to provide as well. I'm very fortunate to have the ability to collaborate with All Data, the CEO who's in the audience, and also DCube AI, where we're looking at developing AI algorithms to monitor patient vital signs that are able to predict how well a patient would be able to do at a future point in time, especially if they're critically injured. So the incorporation of advanced sensor technology and software to integrate with the hardware that Sabrin is building with the eLifePod would be able to look at taking the human out of the loop in future capabilities, such as in space, as part of the Gaganyaan program. Once we actually start going into lunar colonies and Mars colonies. So I think that relationship that we build between Australia and India with consortia like this, which obviously will grow in time, I think is extremely critical.
Thank you very much for those remarks, and I think it's really fascinating to think about how do we provide healthcare for lunar colonies of the future. Enrico spoke about that imaginative spark that space can give, and that certainly seems one of those sectors to me. I'd now like to ask Mr. Naga Daka from Skyroot Aerospace to speak to us about his collaborations with Australia and your kind of Australia-India space journey.
Hello, I'll just give a brief intro about Skyroot. So we are a space launch startup in India. We are building launch vehicles to provide launch services to the international satellite operators. Our first launch vehicle, Vikram 1, can carry around 400 kg of payload mass to low Earth orbit, which we're targeting to launch around mid next year. And coming to our collaboration activities with Australia, we have signed two MOUs with X20 and QL Space on the first day of the inaugural session. Basically, we will be partnering with Australian space ecosystem to be their launch provider in the future, and also to explore auxiliary synergy activities to be able to build a satellite bus or help them in testing and qualification activities of the developments, their design and developments they are doing for their own satellite constellations. So we are excited to hear about the new initiatives taken by the Australian Space Agency and the federal government in general regarding the Indian international space investment initiative, where like Australian companies can partner with Indian space organization or Indian space ecosystem in general and gain financial support from the Australian government. And also, like I heard good news and looking forward to the Moon to Mars initiative that's being built up in Australia. I think it's an exciting time to work together with the Australian ecosystem in the years ahead.
Thank you. It's great to see Skyrate Aerospace taking advantage of Australia's robust regulatory framework for space. We will now move to Dr. Tony Scaleri, CEO of AI Craft, a startup that is a member of the SmartSat CRC-backed Aurora Space Cluster. Tony, could you talk to us a little bit about the support you've received through SmartSat?
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So perhaps just to begin with a few words about the company and where we place. So really, we are about building smart sensors and smart systems. We design and build purpose-built electronics and really into the semiconductor world to bring low-power, very compact, high-speed solutions, which, when it comes to space, is very important. I think there's it's always been about the size, weight, and power, but now the bar has gone higher. And that's where my company is trying to help all the, the ambitions and, that other people want to do. So the SmartSat CRC, jointly with the Aurora Space Cluster, has been a great source of help because they bring together both the industry and academia, and of course the government is involved as well. And so it's been really good in terms of leveraging from state-of-the-art development within academia, but then also in the first place, just knowing who is doing what, because quite often this is the first hurdle. There's a lot of good work being done all around the country, and but it's hard to know where you can leverage from some of those great work. So that's where the SmartSat CRC has put a lot of members together, and at the same time, it's a very experienced team. So when it comes to doing agreements, it's relatively straightforward, and I've been nicely surprised. Having a couple of agreements and looking to actually have some future ones as well. I think now we're looking at growing our ecosystem, and of course we've just partnered with Valdel Technologies, and this is also to try to grow faster, meet the demand on the market. We are also, through the Aurora Space Cluster, we've been connected to Antares Space, and we are launching next month our first device in space, and this has been approved by the NSIL. So it's a very exciting time, and we look forward to more growth, for everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for that, and congratulations on the launch with NSIL. I think that's a really interesting partnership too. We're now going to have some question and answer time, so I'm going to move to a seat here, but if anyone in the audience has a question, please put your hand up, and I think either a microphone will come to you, or someone can take a note of the question and pass it to me. But while we wait for that, I'm actually going to take the chair's prerogative and ask the first question. In one of my other roles in the Foreign Service, I'm what we call a women in leadership advocate, and one of the areas of work we do is encouraging women in STEM. And that's, a journey that many countries are on, but I'd be interested in the views of the panel on what more we can be doing on that. How can we ensure that in, BSXs of the future, the panels have kind of more gender balance? Enrico, can I put you on the spot and ask you for your views first?
Yeah, I'd be very happy. This is a very important topic for our economy, for our citizens in Australia, and for our government. So actually just yesterday, Minister Husick, Honourable Minister Husick, our Minister for Industry and Science, launched a formal review of Australia's Women in STEM programs. What can we learn from the last decade of investments? Did it achieve the outcomes, and how does that inform where we go next? So I think it's terrific that has been kicked off. At the Australian Space Agency, one of our 6 core values is diversity and inclusion. We're proud to lead the sector, so within the Australian Space Agency, we're approximately 50% male-female by gender balance, and that extends throughout the organisation, particularly in our technical area with our Chief Technical Officer, Ord Vignel. So very important. We acknowledge a diverse sector in space in Australia is going to make it more prosperous, but there's work to be done, when you look at the gender balance in the industry.
Yeah, as far as, since you're talking about the women in the STEM, as far as the ISRO also is concerned, we have always been the gender neutral organization. A lot of motivation is there for the women scientists as well. In fact, in many of our missions have been led by the women scientists. And I mean, it's not that, we are only exploring the capability, whether it's a woman or men, that part doesn't come. In fact, in the Mars mission also you would have seen that the entire mission planning was totally handled by the women scientists. And besides space also, if you see any other organization in India, particularly even Department of Science and Technology or DRDO, there are many of their divisions and has been headed by the women. I think so, as far as the STEM thing is concerned, India as well has always been supporting the women and as well been the gender neutral.
I might quickly add as well, as much as there are all these programs, I think what we try to do is actually be very active and participate in those programs. There is a part to demystify some of the work that is being done, which can be perhaps for women quite daunting. So there's some fundamental work that is being done to really encourage more people to come, because it's they will be welcome and they will be taught, and taken through. There's, again, in addition to the SmartSat CRC, there's, for instance, the Andy Thomas Space Foundation, which is doing some great work and led by Professor Nicola Sassanelli, which have this outreach right in the high school and organizing programs. So really at the very early stage to give that appetite, really show what it's like and really be inclusive. So I think it's it needs to keep going. Yeah.
Sure. I think it's a tricky one because in the startup area it's very male dominated, and I do find that the number of applications we get for our program is significantly higher from male founders. So what we try and do is always have female representatives at the highest level. Our industry experts are well balanced in terms of women experts and male experts, and all of our marketing material always includes female founders in that. And it's just trying to create that safe space and that inclusive environment so that women do put themselves forward, because I think that's one of the main issues is that they're not as confident sometimes to put themselves forward. So.
Thank you, Jasmine. Do we have any questions in the audience? Can you wave your hand at me? Okay, yeah, please.
Hi, my name is Pradyumna. My question is to Arvind on the ISI initiative. Could you maybe elaborate a bit more on the timeline, the funding that has been allocated for this program, and also the eligibility for the Indian startups to be able to participate?
Yeah, sure. Thanks for the question. So we were intending to launch the guidelines open by September or October. We are working with our stakeholders and within the government to figure out the exact timelines. But as soon as the program opens, the industry consortiums will have approximately 4 months to prepare the application jointly. So in that 4 months, we will be facilitating the matchmaking workshops that I mentioned. So we'll be inviting participants from Indian industry. We'll be inviting participants from the Australian industry. And when I say industry, I'm including academia and research sector as well. So we are encouraging consortium-based applications. We want partners from industry. We want partners from academia. We want the research sector. We want manufacturing sector to be involved as well. Joint applications teams will have 4 months to apply. And once the application process is complete, we will approximately take 2 to 3 months to evaluate the program and do the due diligence in evaluating the applications. So ample time will be available for the industry to collaborate. We want to make sure that this is a start of a collaborative journey. It's not about putting an application in and being successful or not. It's about the relationships that this process builds along the way. So, hope I answered. Yeah.
You were asking about how much
funding. So, the amount that's available, the funding that's available is public. So it's more than $20 million that goes into this program. The exact specifics are to be determined. We are working very closely and diligently, so we will keep you posted as soon as things become public.
Perhaps as a follow-up, some of our panelists might offer any expertise or tips you might have about applying for Australian government grants, because I think, you know, actually applying for a grant, writing it, knowing how to do that is a skill in and of itself. Does anyone have any thoughts on that?
So we have applied, I think, 2-3 grants now from the Australian government, in which we were offered, let's say, one of them, which was from the South Australian government. So anyone who is looking at, kind of setting up a subsidiary or an office in Australia, there is a program, or there are multiple programs and grants that will avail, that you can avail to kind of establish your entities. One of that is South Australian Defence Landing Pad, and the other one is South Australian Landing Pad programs. These programs are, quite structured in a way for space companies working towards dual-use technologies to come and set up and work with the Australian government.
We also promote a lot of the grant programs to our startups in the program, and we have one in South Australia called the Defence Innovation Partnership, which a number of our space startups have been successful. It's really about working with 2 of the South Australian research organisations, and through that grant you can receive some funding to get some research actually from each of the universities and then work that through in your business. So that's quite a good grant to actually go for too.
I'd like to add on to that. So for Indian industry who are looking to partner with the Australian ecosystem, there are various avenues. ISI will be the start of this, but there are, for example, SmartSat CRC who could facilitate collaborations. There is the Space Industry Association of Australia, who are industry body, who will facilitate some of these interactions. And there are partner agencies within the government, like Austrade, who are specifically mandated for bringing in external stakeholders into the Australian industry. So feel free to reach out to us and we can guide Indian industry and collaborations.
Do we have any other questions in the audience? One here.
Hi, my name is Mayuri. I also have a question for Arvind. Does the ISI mission also support ground-based infrastructure that works with space agencies, for example?
Absolutely. We are considering capabilities across all the segments. Obviously, we have a merit criteria, and all the programs, all the applications will be treated equally through the merit criteria. So ground-based applications to support space missions, space-based applications, space-based payloads, full missions, hosted payloads, technology demonstrators, pathfinders. We will consider the impact it has on the space sector. We will consider the collaboration that is facilitated between the space sectors. And we will consider the impact of the program on existing investment and how it leverages capacity and capability. So, yeah, absolutely.
Namaskaram. My question is to Jasmine Mani. I'm Apiyagni, an aerospace undergraduate. I'm interested in astronomy and would like to know the various student study opportunities that Australia can provide us, including internships or any student opportunities for overseas study in Australia.
So that was a question around any student opportunities to study in Australia?
Yes, ma'am.
I believe each university has scholarship programs that you can apply for. We do have another visa if you're looking to start a company as well as study. There's the 188E visa, which has just been announced recently by the federal government, and that means you can actually study and start a business at the same time. That's probably an easy kind of way to get in if you're looking to start a business, but if you're just looking to study, each of the universities have their own scholarship programs that you can look at.
Thank you so much.
I can add on to this, Sarah. So there are some example programs such as, they are called Cotatel PhDs. Universities in Australia are partners to Indian universities. For example, Macquarie University in Australia is a partner with IITs and IISc, for example. So, and it's just an example, there are other partnerships as well. So the way it works is Cotatel PhDs are dual PhDs offered by universities from both the countries. So half of the PhD is in the Indian university, the rest half is in the Australian university, and basically the candidates get dual PhDs. And Nicola Sassinelli, who is the SmartSat lead, is just over on that table, and I would recommend you to get in touch with Nicola.
Thank you. If I can, Arvid, add any information. The SmartSat CRC is a consortium of 20 universities and the private companies, and we are able to provide the full scholarship for PhD, so 3 years. The important thing is that they have to be embedded in the strategic area that the SmartSat CRC are working on. So that means also involved in some project the single university is take care. So on the website SmartSat CRC you can find all of this information. But happy to answer then on the single base. Thanks.
Thank you for that question. Of course, education links between Australia and India are a real strength of the bilateral relationship. There are now many Indian students studying in Australia, and a really kind of pleasing longer-term outcome of that is a really rapid growth in the Australian diaspora community of citizens of Indian origin. So feel reassured you'd be welcomed in Australia and you'd have a world-class education there too. Thank you. One more question over here.
Yeah, hi. This is Sanjay. I'm a space enthusiast. Glad to be here. My question is slightly generic, actually. It's about whether collaboration between Australia and India can help reusability of rockets and other, technologies that have now of late become very, very cutting edge, especially thanks to SpaceX and so on.
I think there's no inhibitor to collaborating on reusable technologies. I mean, it's clear that the economics of launch to be competitive and also to minimize the environmental impact requires reusability. So I think, our partnerships and programs would not be limited to look at that. Both India and Australia, through our collaboration on the Space Quad Working Group, in a recent statement, I think earlier this year, have committed to look at and consult on the norms of behaviour as it pertains to being space operators. So extending your question beyond reusability to protection of the space environment, that is built into the civil space strategy in Australia, and something we as partners on the Quad Space Working Group are committed to look at, because space is getting more congested and contested. So I don't have any specific examples of where that collaboration could occur, but I think it's a natural evolution we're going to see in both sectors over time. But I don't know, Scientific Secretary, if you're aware of any reusability opportunities.
I think this, what he's asking about the reusable launch vehicles. And definitely, basically to reduce the cost of access to space, it is very much required, but we really need to see how much impact really it is making on the cost factor. ISRO also is working on the reusable launch technology. We are also collaborating with other countries as well as we're very happy to collaborate with Australia. And as he, our head of space agency mentioned about the Quad working group, so it has one of the main agenda to work on the long-term sustainability of the space. So in order to also reduce the debris in space, we are certainly working. But it is very clear the economics is very important in this. We need to really see how economical is really to build a reusable launch vehicle.
I'm going to ask a final question, which is whether our special guests would like to say anything in summation of the discussion today. Any points that you wanted to add to things that have been raised?
No, maybe I'm a panelist here, but if you permit, I can ask one question. My question is, of course, to Mr. Ramana. I think you have given a good amount of clarity as far as, and this question may be from the audience as well. About the ISI, you gave the clarity about the matchmaking workshop and the time duration, which is of like 4 months, and then you will take some time for evaluating. I have only 2 questions. One is, have you any, limitations or, the proportion for the proposals in terms of coming proposals for the launch vehicles or for the satellites or for downstream applications, number 1. Number 2, what is the evaluation criteria? It is, you have made some criteria for evaluation in terms of either a group or consortium, or it is also an interagency evaluation, or it is only being done by the Australian agency as well?
Thank you, sir. I can answer those questions. We are not limiting to a particular segment in this program. We are open for applications from across the segment. Downstream applications, launch segment, satellite, space segment, ground segments, everything's included, but we will assess everything equally across the merit criteria. The merit criteria has several stages. So the absolute, the must is to make sure that applications are consortium based, and we need to have an Australian, it's an Australian program, so the lead will be an Australian company, but it needs to have an Indian partner in the program, in the application. And the merit criteria will be based on how much collaborative efforts are in place. Is it a valuable collaboration for both the countries? So we will be assessing based on that. We will also make sure that the projects are aligned to what we call as technology roadmaps that the Australian government has been releasing. So I have a few in my hand now. So we will make sure that programs are aligned to our objectives. How it will develop the collaboration, how it will develop the capability and capacities, how it will benefit both the nations. In terms of the evaluation and the evaluation panels, we will work very closely with our Indian government stakeholders to make sure that the interests in both the sides are met and taken care of.
Thank you. Thank you.
Then thank you all very much for being here today. I know at the end of a conference it can be hard to show up to another session, but really appreciate the attention and the participation in the conversation. Thank you to all of our panelists who are here. Thank you to CII, to InSpace, to NSIL for your support in organizing this event. And I'd like to actually make a particular shout out to Deputy Consul General Michael Costa, who's standing over there, who's really led the Australian participation in this conference for the 3rd year in a row, with our largest ever delegation, 40 plus Australian delegates here, headed by the head of the Australian Space Agency. You can see the enthusiasm that Australia has for engaging with India on space. I think a number of us are going to be around at the end of the session, so do make sure to come over and connect if there was more information, if you wanted to follow up with any of the companies. That's why we came, it's so that we can build these bridges. Until then, so I think, Enrico, did you want to say any final words?
No, just, on behalf of the whole delegation that's just travelled from far, our Indian partners have been very warm and welcoming, and we've appreciated the hospitality allowing us to be a country partner as well. And one thing that I meant to reference earlier, and again, and hopefully one of many of these we'll see, yesterday I had the pleasure to inaugurate our first Australian space company's presence here in Bangalore. So we have Space Machines Company, the general manager, Pajush, if you want to stand up. So here we have a space company with operations in Australia and operations in India, which is just terrific. And I think that's the start of bigger things to come. So congratulations to Space Machines. And again, thank you very much for the hospitality this year.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. And I might just ask our panelists to stand for a group photo at the front. Thanks.